3 months into my marriage, I had stopped looking over my shoulder, stopped scanning crowds for Sang-hee's sharp features, stopped flinching when someone touched my arm unexpectedly. The constant hum of anxiety that had been my companion for so long had finally, mercifully, gone quiet. I should have known better. I should have remembered that peace, for women like me, was always borrowed, never owned. The morning started like any other Tuesday. I woke up tangled in Minkook's arms, his steady breathing warm against my neck. The Seoul sun filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of our Hanamdong penthouse, painting everything in shades of gold and honey. For a moment, I just lay there, marveling at how different my life had become. A year ago, I was running through a lobby in worn sneakers, clutching a portfolio case like it was the only thing keeping me alive. Now I woke up in a penthouse that cost more than I would have made in 10 lifetimes, married to a man who had looked at me like I was worth protecting before he even knew my name. If stories like this are the kind that stop you mid-scroll and refuse to let go, please hit that subscribe button right now and turn on your notifications. Now, this is part 2 of the story, so if you haven't watched part 1 yet, head to the comments section where you'll find the link waiting for you. Trust me, you'll want the full picture before we dive deeper. Stories like these deserve to be heard, and I promise you, this one is far from over. Now, let's continue. "You're thinking too loud," Minkook murmured, his voice rough with sleep. "Sorry, go back to sleep." "Can't. Or you're vibrating with anxiety." He pulled me closer, pressing a kiss to my shoulder. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. Just grateful, I guess. Sometimes it still feels surreal." The penthouse or the husband? Both. I turned in his arms, facing him. Even half asleep, with his hair disheveled and pillow creases on his cheek, Choi Min-kook looked like someone who could destroy worlds with a phone call. The scar near his temple caught the morning light. "Do you ever worry it's too good? That something's going to come along and shatter all of it?" His dark eyes sharpened, suddenly fully awake. "Did something happen?" "No, I'm just being paranoid." "Paranoia keeps you alive in my world." He sat up, the sheets pooling around his waist. "Tell me." "It's nothing concrete. Just a feeling. Like someone's watching me when I'm at the studio. Like there are eyes on me that I can't see." Min-kook's expression hardened into something cold and focused. "How long has this been happening?" "A few days, maybe a week." I sat up too, pulling the sheet around myself. I didn't want to say anything because I thought I was imagining it. Old habits, you know? After Sang-hee, I spent months feeling watched even when I wasn't. But this feels different. "Yes." I admitted what I hadn't wanted to admit even to myself. "This feels real." Minkook was already reaching for his phone on the nightstand. "I'm doubling your security detail, and I want cameras reviewed from every angle around the studio for the past 2 weeks. "Minkook, it might be nothing. And it might be something." He cupped my face in his hands, his thumb brushing my cheekbone. "I didn't build everything I have by ignoring instincts. Yours are telling you something is wrong. We listen." I nodded, some of the tension in my chest easing. This was what I had married into. Not just the danger, but the protection. The certainty that someone was always watching my back, even when I couldn't see them. "I have to go to the studio today," I said. "I have 3 client consultations and a shipment coming in from my gemstone supplier." "Then Jae-sung goes with you, and you text me every hour." "Every hour?" "Every hour." His voice left no room for negotiation. "Until we know what we're dealing with." If you're new here, please subscribe and turn on notifications. These stories only live because you share them. Now, let's continue. The studio had become my sanctuary over the past year. Located in a converted brownstone in Brooklyn, it was everything I had dreamed of during those long years of saving and hoping. High ceilings with exposed brick, natural light flooding through skylights, a workshop in the back, where I could lose myself in the alchemy of metal and stone. Min Kook had offered to set me up in Manhattan, in some sleek modern space with his name on the lease. I had refused. This studio, this business, needed to be mine. Built with my own hands, funded by my own work. And yes, a loan from my husband that I insisted on paying back with interest. It was the one piece of my life that belonged entirely to Hannah, not to Mrs. Choi. Jae-sung dropped me off at 9 and took up his usual position at a cafe across the street, close enough to respond if needed, but far enough to give me the illusion of independence. I had learned to appreciate the balance, the security without the suffocation. My first client was a bride-to-be named Jennifer, Korean-American like myself, who wanted an engagement ring that honored her grandmother's memory. We spent an hour looking at designs, discussing the symbolism she wanted to incorporate, choosing stones that would catch the light in just the right way. My grandmother always said that jewelry should tell a story, Jennifer said, echoing words I had heard from my own grandmother decades ago. She was right. Every piece I create has a narrative woven into it. By the time I'm done with your ring, it won't just be beautiful. It'll be a love letter to everyone who matters to you. Jennifer left with tears in her eyes and a deposit on a custom piece that would take me 6 weeks to complete. I marked the consultation as a success in my ledger and prepared for my next appointment. That's when I felt it again. The sensation of being watched. A prickling at the back of my neck, like invisible fingers trailing across my skin. I turned slowly, scanning the studio. Nothing seemed out of place. The displays were undisturbed, the door was locked, the windows showed only the normal Brooklyn street traffic outside. But the feeling persisted, an itch I couldn't scratch. I pulled out my phone and texted Min Kook. Feeling it again. Nothing visible, probably paranoid. His response was immediate. Trust your instincts. I'm sending additional security. Stay inside. I tried to focus on my work, but concentration was impossible. Every small sound made me jump. The settling of the old building, a car honking outside, get the chime of the door when my next client arrived. The morning passed in a blur of consultations and forced smiles. By noon, I was exhausted from the effort of appearing normal, while my nerves screamed that something was wrong. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Did you really think you could just disappear into a new life, Hannah? That there wouldn't be consequences for your choices? My blood turned to ice. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling so badly that I nearly dropped the phone. The number was blocked, untraceable. But the words? The words were a knife sliding between my ribs. Another text appeared. Your husband can't protect you from everything. Some things have to be faced alone. And then, see you soon. I didn't remember calling Min Kook. One moment I was staring at my phone in frozen terror, and the next his voice was in my ear, sharp and commanding. Hannah, talk to me. Someone texted me. My voice came out thin, shaky. They know where I am, they know about you. They said they'd see me soon. Forward the messages to Jae-sung right now, then lock the door and don't open it for anyone you don't recognize. Min Kook, what's happening? I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. His voice softened slightly. I'm coming to you. 20 minutes. Don't move. The call ended. I forwarded the texts with shaking fingers, then moved to the door to engage the deadbolt I had installed after Sang-hee's first appearance in my life. The lock clicked into place with a sound that should have been reassuring, but only reminded me how easily locks could be broken. Through the window, I could see Jae-sung already crossing the street. His phone pressed to his ear, his other hand reaching inside his jacket where I knew he kept his weapon. The sight of him should have made me feel safer. Instead, all I could think about were those words. Your husband can't protect you from everything. Who had sent those messages? Sang-hee was supposed to be gone, vanished into whatever life Min Kook's persuasion had created for him. Could he have come back? Could someone else be targeting me? Someone from Min Kook's world, using me to get to him? Or was this something else entirely? Some ghost from my past I hadn't even considered? The questions circled my mind like vultures as I waited, counting the minutes until Minkook arrived. 18 minutes later, a black sedan pulled up outside the studio. Minkook emerged before the car fully stopped, his face a mask of controlled fury that I had learned to recognize as his most dangerous expression. He wasn't shouting, wasn't making dramatic gestures. He was quiet, focused, lethal. Jae-sung unlocked the door for him, and then Min-kook was inside, pulling me into his arms with an intensity that bordered on desperate. "Are you hurt?" "No. Just scared." "Good. Stay scared. It keeps you alert." He pulled back, examining my face like he was checking for wounds I might not have noticed. "Show me the messages." I handed over my phone. He read them 3 times, his jaw tightening with each pass. "The number is blocked," I said unnecessarily. "We can work around that." He was already typing on his own phone, forwarding the screenshots to someone. "I have people who specialize in finding ghosts. Do you think it's Sang-hee?" "I don't know." The tone is wrong. Too dramatic. Too theatrical. Sang-hee was petty and possessive, but he wasn't a performer. Min-kook's eyes met mine. "This feels like someone who wants to be noticed. Someone who's enjoying the fear they're causing." That's not reassuring. It's not meant to be. He took my hands in his. "Hannah, I need you to think. Is there anyone else from your past who might hold a grudge? Anyone who might want to hurt you?" I searched my memory, dredging up faces and names I had tried to forget. Old coworkers, distant relatives, college acquaintances, but no one stood out. No one who would hate me enough for this kind of targeted harassment. "I can't think of anyone. My life before you was small, Minkook. I worked. I went home. I tried to survive. I didn't make enemies. Everyone makes enemies, sometimes without knowing it. Then I don't know who mine are." Minkook was quiet for a moment, processing. Then he made a decision I could see settle over his features like a war mask. "You're not staying at the studio today. We're going home, and you're staying there until I figure out who's doing this. I can't just abandon my business. You can, and you will." His voice was firm, but not unkind. "This isn't about control, Hannah. This is about keeping you alive. Someone is targeting you, and until I know who and why, you don't go anywhere without a full security detail." "Minkook, please." The word seemed to cost him something. Choi Minkook did not beg. "Please trust me on this. I know I can be overprotective. I know I see threats everywhere. But this?" He gestured at my phone. "This is real. Someone wants to hurt you, and I won't let that happen. Even if it means you hate me for a little while." I looked at him. This dangerous man who had turned his entire world upside down for me, who had killed the darkness in my life and replaced it with something terrifying and wonderful and safe. He was asking for my trust. After everything, that was all he wanted. "I don't hate you," I said softly. "I'm scared. And I hate being scared. But I don't hate you." "Then come home. Let me protect you the way I promised I would." I nodded, feeling the weight of that promise settle around me like armor. "Okay, let's go home." These stories don't tell themselves. If you're feeling this journey, hit that subscribe button. Your support keeps these voices alive. Let's keep going. The penthouse felt different when we returned. The spaces that had seemed warm and welcoming this morning now felt exposed, vulnerable. Every window was a potential entry point. Every shadow could hide a threat. Min-kook immediately went to work, making calls, issuing orders, mobilizing the small army of people who worked for him. I watched him transform from my husband into the man the world feared, cold, efficient, utterly ruthless in his pursuit of information. Within hours, he had answers. The phone number had been traced to a burner purchased in cash at a convenience store in Queens. Security cameras at the store showed a figure in a hoodie and sunglasses, face deliberately obscured. The figure was slim, average height, with movements that suggested someone young and agile. Not Sang-hee. Sang-hee was tall and moved with a particular arrogance that was unmistakable even on grainy footage. This was someone else. "We have another lead," Min-kook said, rejoining me in the living room where I had been pretending to read a book while actually staring at the same page for an hour. "The texts originated from a location in Brooklyn, about 6 blocks from your studio. Whoever sent them wanted to be close enough to watch your reaction." "They were watching me." "Yes. Which means they know what you look like, where you work, probably where you live." He sat down beside me, taking my hand. "Hannah, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." "Of course. Is there any chance this could be connected to someone from your life before we met? Not Sang-hee? Someone else? A family member, maybe? Someone who might feel they have a claim on you?" I thought about the question carefully. My family situation was complicated. My parents had died when I was young, leaving me to be raised by my grandmother. I had cousins scattered across the country, aunts and uncles I barely knew. None of them had ever shown particular interest in me. But then a memory surfaced, something I hadn't thought about in years. "My father had a brother," I said slowly. "Uncle Marcus. He and my father had a falling out before I was born. Something about money, I think. My grandmother mentioned him a few times, but she always said he was trouble, someone to stay away from." "Is he still alive?" "I don't know. I never met him. Never tried to find him." I looked at Min-kook. "You think this could be connected to him?" "I think we need to explore every possibility." He was already reaching for his phone again. "What was his full name?" "Marcus Washington. My father was James Washington, and my grandmother was Martha Washington, née Johnson, originally from Lagos, Nigeria." "I know." At my surprised look, he shrugged slightly. "I did a thorough background check before our wedding. Your grandmother's history was part of it." "Of course you did." I should have been annoyed, but honestly, I was just grateful. If anyone could find Uncle Marcus and determine if he was a threat, it was the man sitting beside me. The investigation took 3 days. 3 days of being confined to the penthouse, of watching Min-kook come and go with increasingly grim expressions. I'd have jumping at every notification on my phone in case it was another threatening message. None came. The silence was almost worse than the threats. On the third evening, Min-kook returned with a folder thick with documents and photographs. He set it on the coffee table between us with the weight of a verdict. "We found him." "Uncle Marcus?" "Marcus Dwayne Washington, age 57, currently residing in a halfway house in Newark after serving 8 years for fraud and embezzlement." Min-kook opened the folder, revealing a mugshot of a man who shared my father's eyes but none of his kindness. "He was released 6 months ago. 3 weeks after his release, he started making inquiries about you." My stomach dropped. "What kind of inquiries?" "The kind that cost money. He hired a private investigator to find you, track your movements, document your life. The PI reported back that you had married well, very well, and that your husband had significant resources. He's after money." "It appears so, but it's more complicated than simple greed." Min-kook pulled out another document. "Your grandmother's will left everything to you. Her tools, her recipes, her small savings. But there was another provision. A life insurance policy that your father took out years ago, naming Marcus as the beneficiary in the event that he had no surviving children. But I survived?" "Exactly. You survived, which means the policy paid out to your grandmother's estate instead of Marcus. $50,000 that he believed should have been his." I stared at the documents, trying to make sense of what I was hearing. He's been holding a grudge for, what, 25 years? Over $50,000? For some people, a grudge is all they have. Marcus spent years in and out of prison, blaming everyone but himself for his failures. When he got out this time and discovered that his niece had married into money, he saw an opportunity. An opportunity for what? Min Cook's expression darkened. We intercepted communications between Marcus and an associate. He's planning something, Hannah. Something that involves getting you alone and using you as leverage to extort money from me. The words hit me like a physical blow. My own uncle, a man I had never met, who shared my blood, was planning to hurt me for money. What do? We end this. Min Cook's voice was cold, final. Marcus Washington made a mistake when he targeted you. Now he's going to learn what that mistake costs. Min Cook, please. He's family. I know he's a stranger to me, but he's still my father's brother. I struggle to find the words. I don't want blood on my conscience. Not even his. Something shifted in Min Cook's expression, the cold calculation giving way to something softer, more human. He reached for my hand. I know who you are, Hannah. I know you don't want violence, and I promise you, I will find a way to handle this that doesn't require it. He paused. But I need you to understand that your safety comes first. If it comes down to protecting you or protecting him, there is no choice. There never will be. I nodded, accepting the truth of his words even as I prayed it wouldn't come to that. So what's the plan? We give him what he wants, or what he thinks he wants. If this story is speaking to you, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe, share it. Let others know these narratives exist. Now back to Hannah's choice. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Min Cook had learned that Marcus was planning to approach me at the studio, believing he could catch me alone and vulnerable. Instead, we would arrange a meeting on our terms, in a location we controlled, with enough witnesses to ensure that violence would be impossible. He's a coward, Min Cook explained. Men like Marcus only prey on people they perceive as weak. If he sees that you're protected, that threatening you carries real consequences, he'll back down. And if he doesn't, then we have contingencies. I didn't ask what the contingencies were. Some things I didn't need to know. The meeting was set for a Tuesday afternoon, exactly 1 week after the threatening texts began. Min Cook chose a restaurant in Midtown, upscale, crowded, with private rooms that offered the illusion of intimacy while remaining fully surveilled by his security team. I dressed carefully for the encounter, choosing an outfit that projected confidence I didn't entirely feel. My grandmother's silver bangle on my wrist for courage, diamond earrings that Min Cook had given me for our 3-month anniversary, armor made of precious metals and gemstones. When Marcus Washington walked into the private dining room, I was already seated, flanked by Min Cook on one side and Jae Sung on the other. His step faltered when he saw us. He had clearly expected to find me alone. Hannah. His voice was deeper than I expected, with a roughness that spoke of too many cigarettes and too many hard years. You look just like your mother. I wouldn't know. She died when I was 4. Yeah, car accident. Your daddy never did forgive himself for that. Marcus slid into the seat across from us, his eyes darting between Min Cook and Jae Sung with barely concealed nervousness. This your husband? Choi Min Cook. Min Cook's voice was flat, giving nothing away. I understand you've been asking questions about my wife. Family's got a right to know what family's up to. You've never been her family. You're a name on documents, nothing more. Marcus's expression hardened. That's cold, coming from a man who married a woman he'd known for a few months. What's the matter? Couldn't find a nice Korean girl to settle down with? Be very careful how you speak about my wife. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. You've made a lot of mistakes lately, Mr. Washington. Coming here today could be the biggest one. I just want what's mine. What should have been mine 25 years ago. $50,000. I spoke for the first time since his arrival, and something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe, that I knew. You spent 8 years in prison, got out, and the first thing you did was hunt down the niece you'd never met because you're still angry about $50,000 that was never yours to begin with. It was supposed to be mine. The policy named me. The policy was voided when my father had a child. Me. That's how insurance works. I leaned forward, holding his gaze. You've been holding on to this grudge for a quarter century, Uncle Marcus. You could have built a life, made something of yourself, moved on. Instead, you chose bitterness and blame. And now you're here, threatening me for money, and you actually expect me to feel sorry for you? Marcus's jaw tightened. For a moment, I saw my father in his features. The same stubborn set, the same flash of temper. But where my father had been kind, there was only cruelty in this man's eyes. I don't need your pity, little girl. I need what I'm owed. You're owed nothing. Minkook's voice cut through like a blade. But I'm a generous man, so here's what's going to happen. You're going to take the envelope my associate is about to hand you. Inside is enough money to disappear, to start over somewhere far away from New York, far away from my wife, far away from anyone who might remind you of the family you failed to be part of. Jae-sung produced an envelope and slid it across the table. Marcus eyed it warily. What's the catch? The catch is that this is a one-time offer. Take the money and leave, and you never contact Hannah again. You never speak her name. You never come within 100 miles of any place she might be. If you violate these terms, if you so much as send her a birthday card, what happens next will make prison look like a vacation. You're threatening me. I'm educating you. Minkook's smile didn't reach his eyes. There's a difference. Marcus looked at the envelope, then at me, then at the men flanking me. I could see the calculation happening behind his eyes, weighing his options, measuring his chances. For a moment, I thought he might refuse, might do something stupid. Then his shoulders slumped, and I knew we had won. How much? He asked quietly. Enough. Count it if you want. Marcus opened the envelope, rifled through the bills inside. His eyes widened slightly. Whatever he'd expected, it was more than this. Why? He asked, looking at me. After everything, why give me anything? I considered the question carefully before answering. Because you're my father's brother. Because somewhere, in some version of reality, we could have been family. And because I'm not going to let your poison infect my life anymore. Take the money. Leave. And try, for once, to do something good with the chance you've been given. Marcus stood slowly, pocketing the envelope. He looked older than his years, worn down by decisions that had led him to this moment, begging for scraps from a niece who owed him nothing. Your father was always the better man, he said finally. I guess you take after him. He left without another word, and the silence that followed felt like the end of something, a chapter closing, a wound finally beginning to heal. Are you okay? Minkook asked softly. I don't know. I stared at the door Marcus had disappeared through. I thought I'd feel relieved. Instead, I just feel sad. All those years of anger, and for what? He's still alone. Still bitter. Still looking for someone else to blame for his own choices. You can't save people who don't want to be saved. I know. But I can choose not to become like them. I turned to face him. Thank you. For handling it this way. For giving me a choice instead of just making him disappear. You asked me not to. So I didn't. He took my hand. But Hannah, I need you to understand. If he ever comes back, if he ever threatens you again, I won't be as generous. I know. And I did. Yeah, I knew exactly what kind of man I had married, the violence he was capable of, the darkness that lived beneath his carefully controlled surface. But I also knew the man who had listened to me, who had found another way, because I had asked him to. Both versions of Minkook were real. Both were part of the man I loved. Can we go home now? I asked. Yes. He stood, offering me his hand. Let's go home. The weeks that followed were quiet. Marcus kept his word, disappearing into whatever new life the money could buy him. The threatening texts stopped. The feeling of being watched faded. Slowly, carefully, I began to rebuild the sense of safety that had been shattered. But something else was building too. Something I hadn't expected. It started with small things. A wave of nausea in the morning that I attributed to stress. A sudden aversion to coffee that I blamed on the unsettled emotions of the past month. Fatigue that seemed to drag at my bones no matter how much I slept. It was Keisha who finally said it out loud. "Girl, when was your last period?" We were in her apartment, surrounded by her design work, sharing a pizza that I could barely stomach. The question hit me like a thunderbolt. I don't know. Things have been so crazy, I lost track. "Hannah?" Keisha's eyes were wide. "You need to take a test." "It's probably nothing. Stress does weird things to the body." "And so does pregnancy." She was already on her feet, grabbing her purse. "I'm going to the pharmacy. You're taking a test. Tonight." "Keisha." "Don't Keisha me. Your boobs have been bigger for the past 2 weeks and you've turned green every time I mention garlic. And if that's not pregnancy, I'll eat my design portfolio." She was gone before I could argue, leaving me alone with my racing thoughts. Pregnant. Could I be pregnant? Minkook and I had talked about children in the abstract. Someday, eventually, when the time was right. But we hadn't been trying. We hadn't been not trying either, I realized. We'd been so caught up in building our life together, in surviving the chaos of the past months, that the possibility hadn't felt real. Now it felt very real. Keisha returned with 3 different pregnancy tests because she believed in being thorough. I took all 3. We waited together, watching the clock tick down the longest minutes of my life. When I finally looked at the results, my heart stopped. 3 pink lines, 3 positive tests. I was going to have a baby. We're deep in it now. And if this story has you feeling something, show some love, subscribe, share, and stay tuned. These stories need witnesses. Let's continue. Telling Minkook was terrifying. Not because I thought he'd be angry. I knew him well enough to know that he would never react that way. But because this changed everything. A baby meant vulnerability. A baby meant stakes that were even higher than before. A baby meant bringing a new life into a world that was often dangerous, often cruel. I found him in his home office, reviewing documents with the same intense focus he brought to everything. He looked up when I entered, immediately reading the tension in my posture. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong." I closed the door behind me, took a deep breath. "I need to tell you something." Minkook set down his papers, giving me his full attention. "I'm listening. I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air between us. I watched his face, searching for some reaction, surprise, joy, fear. For a long moment there was nothing. Just that intense focus, processing what I had just said. Then something shifted. Something I had never seen before in Choi Min-kook's eyes. Wonder. "You're sure?" His voice was barely above a whisper. 3 tests. I'll see a doctor tomorrow to confirm, but yes, I'm sure. He stood slowly, crossing the room to stand in front of me. His hands reached out, hovering over my still flat stomach like he was afraid to touch, afraid to make it real. "We're having a baby. We're having a baby." And then Choi Min-kook, the man who controlled empires and made enemies tremble, pulled me into his arms and cried. The pregnancy changed everything and nothing. Min-kook's protectiveness, already intense, ratcheted up to levels that would have been suffocating if they hadn't come from such a place of love. He hired additional security, had the penthouse checked for environmental hazards, replaced all our cleaning products with organic alternatives. He read every parenting book he could find, attended every doctor's appointment, held my hair back during the brutal first trimester nausea with a tenderness that made me fall in love with him all over again. The business continued. My studio thrived. I modified my work schedule to accommodate the pregnancy, taking on fewer rush orders and spending more time on the designs that truly inspired me. The baby growing inside me became my greatest design project, this tiny life that Minkook and I were creating together. There was one shadow that refused to lift: Mrs. Choi. Minkook's mother had maintained her silence since refusing to attend our wedding. 3 years of estrangement, stretching back to before I even existed in their family's consciousness. Minkook rarely spoke of her, but I could see the hurt beneath his controlled surface, the son who had tried to please an impossible parent and eventually stopped trying. When we found out I was pregnant, I asked him if he wanted to tell her. No, he said flatly. She made her choice. She's your mother. She's a woman who chose her prejudices over her son. That's not a mother. That's a stranger who happens to share my DNA. I let the matter drop, but it haunted me. Every child deserved grandparents. Every family deserved a chance at reconciliation. And somewhere in Seoul, a woman was missing out on knowing her son, her daughter-in-law, and now her grandchild because she couldn't see past the color of my skin. At 4 months pregnant, I did something Minkook would have forbidden if he'd known. I wrote to his mother. The letter took me a week to compose. I wrote and rewrote, searching for words that would bridge years of silence and wounds that weren't mine to heal, but had become mine to carry. Dear Mrs. Choi, my name is Hannah. I am your son's wife. You probably know this already, along with many other things about me that your investigators reported. You know that I'm Black, that I'm American, that I met your son in an elevator and married him months later. You know all the facts, but you don't know me. I'm writing because I believe that people can change. Not always, and not easily. But sometimes, when they want it badly enough, when they're given a reason to try. I'm pregnant, Mrs. Choi. Your son is going to be a father. You're going to be a grandmother. And your grandchild, this baby I'm carrying, will be both Korean and Black. Both of our heritages, blended into something new. I know you have reservations about me. I know you disapproved of Minkook's choice, but this baby didn't make any choices. This baby is innocent of all the history and hurt between our families. I'm not asking you to accept me. I'm not asking you to change your beliefs. I'm just asking you to consider whether your grandchild deserves to know their grandmother, whether Minkook deserves a chance to reconcile with his mother before it's too late. The choice is yours, but I wanted you to know that if you ever want to meet me, to talk, and to try, I'm willing. For the sake of this baby, I'm willing to try. With respect, Hannah Choi. I sent the letter without telling Minkook, not because I wanted to deceive him, but because I needed to do this on my own terms. If his mother rejected the offer, he never needed to know. If she accepted, well, we would cross that bridge when we came to it. 2 weeks passed. Then 3. I began to accept that silence was her answer. Then, on a rainy Tuesday morning, our doorbell rang. She was smaller than I expected. The photographs Minkook kept buried in a drawer hadn't prepared me for the reality of his mother. This tiny, elegant woman in traditional Korean dress, standing in our doorway, with an expression that wavered between pride and uncertainty. Mrs. Choi, I managed. Please, come in. She entered slowly, her eyes moving over the penthouse with careful attention, taking in the fusion of Korean and African art that decorated our walls. The photographs of our wedding that Minkook had insisted on displaying. The evidence of the life her son had built without her. You wrote to me, she said finally. Yes. It was very bold. Very presumptuous. I know. My son doesn't know you sent that letter, does he? No. I wanted to give you the choice without putting pressure on either of you. Mrs. Choi turned to face me fully, and for the first time I saw something other than disapproval in her eyes. Something that looked almost like respect. You're either very brave or very foolish, Hannah. I haven't decided which yet. Probably both, I admitted. But I know what it's like to lose family. I know how much I miss my grandmother. How much I would give for one more conversation with her. Minkook pretends your estrangement doesn't hurt him, but I see it. I feel it. And I didn't want our child to grow up without knowing their grandmother because of pride, yours or mine. You assume I want to be in this child's life? No. I assume you might, if given the chance. I assume that beneath whatever prejudices you hold, you're still a mother who loves her son. And I assume that love can be stronger than fear, if we let it. Mrs. Choi was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. I have spent 3 years telling myself that I was right, that Min-kook made a foolish choice, that this marriage would fail, that eventually he would come back to his senses. She paused. But 3 years is a long time to be angry. And your letter? Your letter said things I needed to hear, things I wasn't ready to hear before. What changed? Grandchildren. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. My own mother told me that grandchildren change everything, that you can hold on to your principles or you can hold your grandchildren, but not always both. So you're willing to try? I'm here, aren't I? She looked around the penthouse again, this time with less judgment and more curiosity. Your letter said you were willing to meet me, to talk. So talk. Tell me about yourself. Tell me about your family, your work, the things my investigators couldn't capture in their reports. I gestured toward the living room. Would you like some tea? I would. This is where it all comes together. If you've made it this far, you're part of this story now. Subscribe, share, and let's finish this journey together. We talked for hours. I told her about my grandmother, about learning to work with metal and stone, about the philosophy of creation that had been passed down through generations of my family. She told me about her own mother, a seamstress who had survived the Korean War and rebuilt her life from nothing. We found common ground in unexpected places, both of us immigrants' daughters, both of us raised by strong women who sacrificed everything for their families. The differences remained, but they seemed smaller somehow when placed against the weight of what we shared. When Min-kook came home that afternoon, he froze in the doorway of his own living room, staring at his mother like he was seeing a ghost. Iyama? Min-kooka. Mrs. Choi stood, her composure cracking slightly. Your wife invited me. Hannah. He turned to me, confusion and hurt warring in his expression. I wrote to her. Weeks ago. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to get your hopes up if she didn't respond. I stood, moving to his side. I know I should have asked you first, but I couldn't watch you pretend you don't miss her anymore, and I couldn't let our baby grow up without knowing their grandmother. Min-kook's jaw worked, processing. I could see the battle playing out behind his eyes, the hurt of 3 years of silence, the anger at his mother's rejection, the desperate hope that things could be different. Why now? He asked his mother. 3 years of nothing and now you show up at my door? Because I was wrong. The words seemed to cost her something. I was wrong about your wife. Wrong to stay away. Wrong to let my pride matter more than my son. Mrs. Choi's voice cracked. I've missed you, Min-kook. Every day for 3 years I've missed you. And I don't want to miss any more. The silence stretched between them, years of pain and misunderstanding, compressed into a single moment. Then Min-kook crossed the room and pulled his mother into his arms. I watched them hold each other, these two people who had spent so long apart, finally finding their way back. It wasn't a perfect reconciliation. There would be difficult conversations ahead, wounds that needed tending, trust that needed rebuilding. But it was a start. And sometimes, a start was all you needed. 5 months later, I gave birth to a daughter. We named her Martha Soo-yeon Choi. Martha for my grandmother. Soo-yeon for Min-kook's grandmother. 2 names, 2 heritages. One perfect little girl who looked up at us with eyes that already seemed to hold all the wisdom in the world. Mrs. Choi cried when she held her for the first time. She's beautiful, she whispered, tracing the baby's features with gentle fingers. She looks like both of you, like all of us, somehow. She does, Min-kook agreed, his voice thick with emotion. I watched them, my husband, my mother-in-law, my daughter, and felt something settle in my chest. Peace. Real peace. Not the borrowed kind. The kind that comes from building a family, brick by brick, choice by choice, until the foundation is strong enough to weather any storm. Was it perfect? No. There were still moments of tension with Mrs. Choi, still days when Min Kook's world felt too dark and dangerous for the life I wanted for my daughter. There were still ghosts in my past. Sang-hee, Uncle Marcus, all the people who had tried to define me, diminish me, destroy me. But I had survived them all. Survived and thrived and created something beautiful from the wreckage of what had been. And every night when I held my daughter in my arms and watched her sleep, I remembered the woman I had been 1 year ago, running through a lobby in worn sneakers, clutching a portfolio case like a shield, desperately searching for safety. That woman had found what she was looking for. She had found a man who saw her as worthy of protection, a family that had learned to love across its differences, a business that honored her grandmother's legacy, a daughter who would grow up knowing she was cherished, that she belonged, that she was home. Not despite who she was, because of it. On Martha's first birthday, we threw a party at the penthouse. Mrs. Choi came, of course, along with Jae Sung and his wife, Keisha and her new boyfriend, and a handful of carefully vetted friends who understood the nature of the world we lived in. Min Kook found me on the balcony, overlooking the city that had become my home. Hiding from your own party? Just thinking. I leaned into him as he wrapped his arms around me. Remember the first time we met? You crashed into me in an elevator and nearly gave me a heart attack. I was running for my life. I know. And I decided in that moment that I was going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never had to run again. I turned in his arms, looking up at the face I loved more than I had ever thought possible to love another person. You kept that promise. I always will. Inside, our daughter laughed at something her grandmother was doing, probably making faces which was entirely undignified for a woman of Mrs. Choi's stature, but had become her favorite way to entertain the baby. We built something good, I said softly. Despite everything. Despite where we came from. Despite who we are. We built something good. We did. Min Kook kissed my forehead. And we're just getting started. Thank you for staying with Hannah's complete journey. From an elevator escape to finding family, love, and legacy, this story is proof that the best things often come from the worst moments. If this touched you, please subscribe and share it. These voices matter. These stories deserve to be heard. Until next time, keep breathing life into the narratives that refuse to stay silent.